After the formal speeches, people mingled. Richard found himself in conversation after conversation with parents of deaf children, deaf adults sharing their experiences, educators discussing best practices. A young mother approached him, tears streaming down her face. She held a toddler who wore small hearing aids. "Mr. Whitmore, thank you," she said, her voice shaking. "My son was diagnosed deaf 6 months ago. I've been grieving like he died. Everyone tells me to focus on making him hear, on speech therapy, on fixing him, but your foundation sent someone to talk to me. A deaf woman with a PhD and a successful career. She told me my son could have a full, beautiful life as a deaf person. She taught me that I needed to learn ASL, not force my son to become hearing. You saved me from making my son feel broken." Richard felt emotion rise in his throat. "Your son isn't broken. He's perfect as he is. Learn his language. Connect him with deaf community. Let him be proud of who he is." The woman nodded, wiping her eyes. "We start ASL classes next week. Our whole family. We're going to enter his world instead of forcing him into ours." "That's exactly right," Richard said. "That's what he needs most." Throughout the evening, similar conversations happened everywhere. Parents finding hope, deaf adults feeling seen and valued, community being built. Sophie spent the evening with other deaf kids, signing rapidly, laughing, completely in her element. At one point, Richard watched her explaining to a younger deaf child what a cochlear implant was, how it helped her but didn't make her hearing, how it was okay to be deaf with or without technology. Clara appeared beside Richard and signed. "She's a natural advocate. She learned from the best." Richard signed back. "She learned from surviving, from being seen, from understanding that her experience has value and can help others." Richard looked around the room at all these people connected by language, culture, and shared experience. A year ago, he'd known nothing about deaf culture. Now he was deeply embedded in this community, learning constantly, using his resources to support their needs and amplify their voices. Over the following months, the foundation grew rapidly. They provided scholarships for deaf students, funded deaf artists and entrepreneurs, created mentorship programs pairing deaf kids with successful deaf adults, offered free ASL classes in community centers across the city, worked with schools to improve deaf education, advocated for policy changes to increase accessibility. But for Richard, the most meaningful work happened in smaller, quieter moments, like when he visited a family with a newly diagnosed deaf baby and could assure them from personal experience that their child would be okay, that they could learn to communicate beautifully. That deaf culture was rich and vibrant and worth embracing. Or when he attended deaf community events not as a donor or founder, but as a father and community member, playing with deaf kids, signing with deaf adults, being part of something bigger than himself. Or the evenings at home with Sophie, signing about her day, her dreams, her thoughts. Real conversations, deep connections. The relationship he'd always wanted but hadn't known how to build. Sophie thrived. At school, she excelled academically and socially. She performed in deaf theater productions. She wrote poetry in ASL that was filmed and shared online. She started a blog for deaf kids offering advice and encouragement. At age 8, she was already changing lives. One evening, about 18 months after her surgery, Sophie came to Richard's study. She signed, "Dad, can I ask you something?" "Of course. Do you think Mom would be proud of us?" "Of how we've changed?" Richard felt his eyes sting. "I think your mom would be incredibly proud. Proud of how brave you've been. Proud that I finally learned to be the father you deserved. Proud that we're using our experience to help other families." "I miss her," Sophie signed. "And I miss Grandma. But I'm not sad all the time anymore." "Is that okay?" "That's more than okay, sweetheart. That's healing. That's what they'd want for you. To live fully, to find joy, to honor their memory by living well." Sophie climbed into his lap even though she was getting too big for it. Richard held her, signing against her back where she could feel the rhythm. "I love you. I'm so proud of you. You've taught me more than I ever taught you." 2 years after Clara first entered their lives, Richard hosted another event, a celebration of the foundation's impact. They'd served over 500 families, provided ASL training to 2,000 hearing parents, connected 300 deaf kids with deaf mentors, funded 15 deaf-owned businesses, changed lives across the city. But the real measure of success wasn't in the numbers. It was in the faces of parents who could finally communicate with their children, in deaf kids who felt proud of their identity instead of broken, In a community that felt seen, valued, and supported, Clara stood at the microphone signing her own speech. Richard interpreted for the hearing audience. 2 years ago, I was a housekeeper watching a child suffer. I saw myself in her. I saw my younger self, grief-stricken and isolated, feeling like nobody understood. I couldn't walk past that. I had to help. She paused, her hand still for a moment before continuing. But what happened next surprised me. I thought I was helping one family. Instead, I became part of a movement. Richard didn't just learn sign language. He learned humility. He learned to listen. He learned that people without money or power often have the wisdom that wealthy, powerful people need, and he used his resources to amplify voices that society usually ignores. Clara looked at Richard and Sophie. This family taught me that healing is possible, that connection across difference is possible, that when we truly see each other, really see each other, we can change the world. One relationship at a time, one conversation at a time, one moment of understanding at a time. The audience applauded, hands waving. Sophie stood up and joined Clara at the front, signing her own thoughts. I'm deaf. That's part of who I am. For a long time, I thought that made me less than other people, less than hearing people. But Clara taught me that I'm not less. I'm different. And different is beautiful. My dad learned to enter my world instead of forcing me to exist only in his. And now we're helping other families do the same thing. Sophie paused, her young face serious. If you're a hearing parent with a deaf child, learn sign language. Not just a few signs. Really learn it. Become fluent in your child's language. Let them see that you think their world is worth entering. Let them see deaf adults who are successful and happy. Let them be proud of who they are. More applause. Sophie smiled, her confidence growing with each word. That evening, after the event ended, Richard, Sophie, and Clara sat together in Richard's study. They'd started a tradition of having dinner together once a week, the three of them signing and laughing and being family. Can I tell you something? Sophie signed. When Grandma died, I thought my life was over. I thought I'd never be happy again. But losing her led me to find Clara, and finding Clara led Dad to change, and all of that led to the foundation that's helping so many people. So maybe Grandma dying wasn't just sad. Maybe it was also the start of something important. I think your grandmother would love that perspective, Clara signed. She'd love that you found meaning in loss, that you transformed grief into purpose. Do you still miss your mom? Sophie asked Clara. Every day, Clara signed honestly. Missing people doesn't stop. But it changes. It becomes softer, less sharp. You learn to carry it without being crushed by it. Richard watched his daughter and the woman who'd saved her, conversing in the language that connected them. He thought about how much had changed in 2 years. How much he'd changed. From a man who thought money solved everything to someone who understood that love, presence, and understanding mattered more than any amount of wealth. He thought about the hundreds of families the foundation was serving. The deaf kids who were growing up proud instead of ashamed. The hearing parents who were learning to see their children as whole, complete people. The deaf adults who finally had a wealthy ally willing to fund their visions and amplify their voices, all because Clara had seen a suffering child and refused to look away. I want to tell you both something, Richard signed. I used to think success meant building a business empire, making money, having power, but real success is this, right here. Being able to communicate with my daughter, being part of a community, using my resources to help people who need it. This is what matters. This is what life is really about. You've come a long way. Clara signed with a smile. From a man who barely noticed his housekeeping staff to someone who understands that every person has value and wisdom to offer. You taught me that, Richard signed. You taught me to really see people, all people, not just those with money or credentials or status. Everyone. Sophie leaned against her father on one side and Clara on the other. 3 people from different worlds connected by crisis and choice, by language and love. I'm writing a paper for school about heroes, Sophie signed. Can I write about you, Auntie Clara? Clara shook her head. I'm not a hero, baby. I just did what anyone should do when they see someone suffering. I helped. That's exactly what makes you a hero, Sophie signed. You saw someone who needed help and you gave it. Even though it wasn't your job. Even though nobody asked you to. You just did it because it was right. That's what heroes do. What did any of it matter if the most important relationship in his life, was with a stranger who happened to share his DNA and his last name. The music stopped and Vincent heard Cameron's laughter, bright and genuine. Then Rose's voice saying something he couldn't quite make out, followed by more laughter. Vincent stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the perfectly manicured grounds of his estate. He'd built all this. He'd earned every dollar that paid for every blade of grass, but he'd missed something crucial along the way. He'd forgotten that success meant nothing if you had no one to share it with. That money couldn't buy the thing his son needed most: a father who was actually present. Tomorrow he'd start figuring out how to fix it. Tonight he'd just listen. He'd exist in his own home like a ghost, observing the life that had been happening without him, learning about his son from the shadows, and maybe, just maybe, he'd figure out how to step into the light. Vincent spent the night in his own home like a secret. He ordered dinner delivered to his study, claiming to staff he had urgent work. He heard Cameron come upstairs around 8, heard the shower running, heard his son's footsteps padding down the hallway to his bedroom. He wanted to knock on the door, to talk to him, but something stopped him. He needed to understand more first. He needed to see the full picture before he disrupted it. The next morning, Vincent woke at 5:30, which was normal for him. What wasn't normal was staying in his pajamas and creeping downstairs like a burglar in his own house. He made coffee quietly and positioned himself in the small breakfast nook off the kitchen, the one with a view into the main kitchen but hidden enough that he could observe without being seen. At 6 o'clock exactly, he heard the back door open. Rose Bennett came in carrying a canvas bag and a thermos. She wore simple clothes, jeans, and a worn sweater, and her hair was pulled back in a neat bun. She moved through the kitchen with the efficiency of someone who knew exactly where everything was. But she didn't just start cleaning. First, she put on water for tea. Then she pulled ingredients from the refrigerator, fresh vegetables and eggs and cheese. She started cooking, humming softly to herself, some melody Vincent didn't recognize. At 6:45, Cameron came downstairs in his school uniform, his hair still damp from the shower. He looked half asleep, dragging his backpack. "Morning, baby," Rose said without turning around. "How'd you sleep?" "Okay, I guess." "Had weird dreams." Cameron dropped his backpack by the table and slumped into a chair. "Good weird or bad weird?" "Just weird. I was playing piano in front of a huge crowd, but I couldn't remember the notes, and everyone was waiting for me to start." Rose turned from the stove, carrying a plate with a perfect omelet and fresh fruit. She set it in front of Cameron. "That's anxiety talking. Your brain processing stress. You worried about something?" Cameron picked up his fork, poking at the omelet. "We have this presentation in history class today. I'm not really prepared. You studied last night. I saw you with your notes. Yeah, but what if I forget everything? What if I freeze up and look stupid in front of everyone?" Rose sat down across from him with her own cup of tea. "First of all, you're not going to look stupid. You're a smart kid. Second, even if you do forget something, so what? You're 12 years old. You're allowed to make mistakes. That's how you learn. Easy for you to say. You're not the one standing up there." "True. But I've stood up in front of people plenty of times in my life, and I've messed up plenty of times too. You know what I learned? The people who care about you don't judge you for messing up, and the people who do judge you don't matter anyway." Cameron considered this, chewing his omelet. "Did you really perform piano in front of people? Like on a stage?" Rose's expression changed slightly, became distant. "A long time ago, yes. When I was younger than you are now, actually. I played in recitals, competitions, all kinds of things." "Were you nervous?" "Terrified. Every single time. But I loved it too, that feeling of sharing music with people, of making them feel something." "So why did you stop? Why are you—" Cameron trailed off, looking embarrassed. "Why am I cleaning houses instead of playing concert halls?" Rose finished for him, smiling gently. "That's a fair question. Life happened, honey. I made choices, some good and some not so good. I had responsibilities. Music became something I did for myself, not for audiences. Do you miss it? The performing?" "Sometimes. But you know what I don't miss? The pressure. The constant judgment. The feeling that your worth as a person depends on how perfectly you play." Rose reached over and tapped Cameron's hand. "That's why I teach you differently. Music should be joy, not pressure. It should be freedom, not fear." Vincent watched this exchange from his hiding spot, his coffee growing cold in his hands. The way Rose talked to Cameron was so natural, so easy. She didn't talk down to him or brush off his concerns. She met him where he was, validated his feelings, and gently guided him toward a better perspective. This happened every morning for the next 3 days. Vincent watched as Rose and Cameron had breakfast together, talking about everything from schoolwork to feelings to random observations about life. Rose asked questions and actually listened to the answers. She shared stories from her own life that somehow always had a lesson or insight that Cameron needed to hear. After breakfast, Rose would help Cameron review whatever he was studying that day. But it wasn't like the tutors Vincent hired, who drilled information into Cameron's head with the warmth of a computer program. Rose made learning feel like a conversation. When Cameron struggled with math, she related it to music theory. When he got frustrated with history, she told him stories that brought the dates and events to life. Everything connects, she told him one morning. Math, music, history, science, it's all part of understanding the world. The trick is finding the connections that make sense to you. After Cameron left for school, Rose did clean the house. But Vincent noticed she did it differently than other housekeepers he'd employed. She didn't just dust and vacuum mechanically. She moved through the rooms like she cared about them, straightening photos, opening curtains to let in light, bringing in fresh flowers from the garden. In the afternoon, before Cameron got home, Rose would sit at the piano herself and play. Vincent found himself drawn to these moments, creeping closer to listen. She was extraordinary. Her playing had a depth and emotion that made Vincent's chest tight. This wasn't someone who'd just taken a few lessons. This was someone who'd dedicated years to mastering an instrument. What had happened to her? What choices had led a woman with this much talent to spend her days cleaning other people's houses? When Cameron got home from school around 4, the house transformed. Rose would have a snack ready, and they'd sit together while Cameron talked about his day. Really talked, not the one-word answers Vincent usually got when he asked how school was. Cameron told Rose about his friends, about the girl he thought was cute but was too scared to talk to, about the teacher who was unfair, about feeling left out when other kids talked about their family vacations because Vincent was always too busy to take time off. And Rose listened to all of it with the same patient attention. She didn't try to fix everything. Sometimes she just said, "That sounds hard," or, "I understand why you'd feel that way." Other times she offered gentle advice or shared a story from her own life that helped Cameron see things differently. But the piano lessons were what mesmerized Vincent most. Every afternoon from 4:30 to 5:30, Cameron and Rose worked on music together. And Vincent began to understand that these weren't just piano lessons. They were therapy sessions disguised as music. "Play that section again," Rose would say, "but this time think about something that makes you angry. Let that anger come through your fingers." Cameron would play and the music would transform, becoming sharper, more intense. "Good. You feel how the emotion changes the music? Now play it again, but this time think about something that makes you sad." The music would soften, become melancholy. "This is the secret," Rose told him. "Music is a language for feelings you don't have words for. When you're upset about your mama being gone, when you're lonely because your daddy's always working, when you're scared or angry or confused, you can put it all into the music. And somehow that makes it hurt less. Does it work for you?" Cameron asked one afternoon. "When you're sad, does playing piano help?" "Every time," Rose said quietly. "Music saved my life more times than I can count." On the 3rd day of Vincent's secret observation, something happened that cracked him wide open. Cameron came home from school visibly upset. He dropped his backpack, slumped at the kitchen table, and put his head in his hands. Rose set down the vegetables she was chopping and immediately sat beside him. "What happened?" "Mom called during lunch. The school let me take it because she never calls, and I thought maybe something was wrong." "Was she okay?" "She's fine. She just wanted to tell me she's pregnant. She and Pierre are having a baby." She sounded so happy about it, Rose. Like this is the family she always wanted. Rose's expression tightened, but her voice stayed calm. "And how did that make you feel?" "Like I wasn't enough." Cameron's voice cracked. "Like she left because I wasn't good enough to make her want to stay. And now she's having a new baby, a better one she'll actually want to raise." "Cameron, look at me." Rose took his face in her hands, firm but gentle. "Your mama leaving had nothing to do with you not being good enough. Adults make choices for complicated reasons that have nothing to do with their children." She didn't leave because of who you are. She left because of who she is. But she's excited about this new baby. She never sounded excited about me. Some people aren't ready to be parents when they become parents. Some people grow up and become ready later. That's about her journey, not about your worth. Rose pulled Cameron into a hug. You are smart and kind and talented. You are worthy of love exactly as you are. Don't let anyone, not even your mama, make you feel otherwise. Cameron cried then, really cried, in a way Vincent had never seen, and Rose held him, rubbing his back and making soothing sounds, letting him get it all out. Vincent stood in the hallway listening to his son sob, and he felt like the world's biggest failure. This was his job. He should have been the one Cameron called when he got that news. He should have been the one comforting his son, holding him, telling him he was worthy of love. But he wasn't. He was hiding in his own house like a stranger, watching the maid do his job because he'd been too absent to build the kind of relationship where his son felt safe falling apart with him. After Cameron calmed down, Rose made him tea and they sat together in comfortable silence. Then she said, "Come on, let's go play some piano. Let's take all that hurt and turn it into something beautiful." They went to the music room and Cameron played. He played with such raw emotion that Vincent had to grip the doorframe to steady himself. His son was pouring every ounce of pain into that piano, and Rose stood beside him, conducting gently, encouraging him. That's it. Feel it, let it out. Music is how we survive the things that try to break us. When Cameron finished, he was crying again, but it was different this time. Cleaner somehow. Like he'd purged something toxic. Better? Rose asked. Yeah, actually. How does that work? Because you're not holding it inside anymore. You're expressing it, releasing it. That's why artists exist, baby. We turn pain into art so it doesn't poison us. That evening, after Cameron went to bed, Vincent finally emerged from hiding. He found Rose in the kitchen, wiping down counters and preparing things for the morning. When she saw him, she nearly dropped the dish towel. "Mr. Blackwell." "Sir, I didn't know you were home." "When did you arrive?" "I can leave immediately if—" "Sit down," Vincent said quietly. "Please." Rose sat at the kitchen table, her hands folded, clearly expecting to be fired. "I've been home for 3 days," Vincent admitted. "I've been watching. I've seen what you've been doing with my son." Rose's face went pale. "I apologize if I overstepped any boundaries, sir. I know I'm just the housekeeper. I shouldn't have." "You've been teaching him piano. You've been talking to him about his mother. You've been—" Vincent's voice caught. "You've been raising him, parenting him, being there for him in ways I haven't. Mr. Blackwell, I would never try to replace you. Why didn't you tell me you were a trained musician when you applied for this job?" Rose looked down at her hands. "Because that's not what I was applying for, sir. I was applying to clean houses. People like you don't hire people like me to teach their children. You hire us to scrub toilets and fold laundry." Vincent pulled out a chair and sat down across from Rose, studying her face in the dim kitchen light. She looked tired but dignified, sitting there in her worn sweater, waiting to be judged. He'd spent 3 days watching this woman pour love and attention into his son, and now he realized he knew almost nothing about her. "Tell me your story," Vincent said. "The real one, not what's in your employment file. I want to know how someone who plays piano like you do ends up working as a housekeeper." Rose was quiet for a long moment. Vincent could see her deciding how much to share, whether to trust him with the truth. Finally she spoke. "I grew up in a small town in Georgia. My grandmother was a church pianist, and she started teaching me when I was 4 years old. By the time I was 8, people in town said I was a prodigy. By 12, I was playing at concert halls in Atlanta. When I was 16, I got a full scholarship to a prestigious music conservatory up north." "That's incredible," Vincent said. "It was, for a while." Rose's voice became quieter. "I studied there for 4 years. I was going to be a professional pianist. That was the plan. Perform with symphonies, tour the world, maybe teach at a university someday. And then in my senior year, I got pregnant." Vincent stayed silent, letting her continue. "The father was another music student. When I told him, he panicked and disappeared. Transferred to a different school, and I never saw him again. My family back home was very religious, very traditional. When I told them, they said I'd brought shame on the family. They told me not to come home. I'm sorry," Vincent said quietly. Rose shrugged, but Vincent could see the old pain in her eyes. "I had my daughter, Natasha. Beautiful baby girl. And suddenly my priorities changed completely. I couldn't tour the world or practice 8 hours a day. I had a baby to feed and no family support. The conservatory let me finish my degree, but barely. After graduation, I tried to find work as a performer. But who's going to hire a single mother with an infant? I needed flexibility and guaranteed income, not the unstable life of a musician. So you started cleaning houses. Not right away. First, I worked as a waitress. Then I nannied for a while. Eventually, I found that housekeeping paid better and offered more freedom. I could take Natasha with me to some jobs when she was little. The hours were flexible. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills. And the music? Rose smiled sadly. Music became something I did in stolen moments. Late at night after Natasha went to bed. In churches when they let me practice on their pianos. It became private, personal. Not a career anymore, just something that kept me sane. What happened to your daughter? Rose's face transformed, pride shining through. Natasha graduated from law school 3 years ago. She works for a civil rights organization now, fighting for people who can't fight for themselves. She's brilliant and passionate and everything I could have hoped for. You raised her alone, every step of the way, and I'd do it again in a heartbeat. Was it hard? Yes. Did I sacrifice my dreams? Yes, but I got something better. I got to watch my daughter grow into an amazing woman. I got to be there for every moment, every milestone. That's worth more than any concert hall. Vincent sat back in his chair, processing this. Why didn't you ever try to go back to music? After Natasha grew up? By then, I'd been out of the performance world for 20 years. You can't just walk back into that after so long. Plus, I was in my 40s. Nobody wants to hire a middle-aged pianist when there are talented 20-year-olds desperate for work. And honestly, Rose looked directly at Vincent. I'd made peace with it. Music became something I shared in different ways. Teaching kids at church, playing at community events, and now teaching your son. Why, Cameron? Why did you start teaching him? Rose thought about it carefully. About 6 weeks ago, I was cleaning the music room. That piano was just sitting there, this beautiful instrument gathering dust. I couldn't help myself. I sat down and played for a few minutes. Just for me, you know? And Cameron heard me. He came in and asked me to play more. She smiled at the memory. He sat and listened for 20 minutes, completely absorbed. When I finished, he said it was the most beautiful thing he'd ever heard. He asked if I could teach him. I said I was just the housekeeper that his father would have to approve. And he said his father wouldn't care one way or the other. Vincent flinched. He said that? He did. And the sad thing was, he wasn't being mean. He was just stating a fact as he understood it. That you were too busy to notice or care what he did with his free time. Rose's voice was gentle but firm. I'm not judging you, Mr. Blackwell. I know you work hard to provide for him, but providing money isn't the same as providing presence. So you started teaching him. I did, and I saw how much he needed it. Not just the music lessons, but the attention, someone to really listen to him, someone to help him process his feelings about his mother leaving, someone to see him as more than just a smart kid who gets good grades. Rose leaned forward. Your son is hurting, Mr. Blackwell. He's lonely and confused and trying to figure out why the two people who are supposed to love him most keep choosing other things over him. The words hit Vincent like a physical blow. I never chose work over him, didn't you? Rose's voice was kind but unflinching. When was the last time you had dinner with him? Really sat down and talked about his day? When was the last time you went to one of his school events? When was the last time you told him you love him? Vincent opened his mouth to answer and realized he couldn't remember. Weeks, months? The school events all blurred together, and he was pretty sure he'd missed the last several. Dinners were usually him working late while Cameron ate with whatever staff was on duty. And saying I love you? That wasn't something the Blackwell men did. His own father had never said it to him. I provide everything for him, Vincent said, but it sounded weak even to his own ears. Private school tutors, this house, anything he could possibly want. Except you. Rose stood up, apparently deciding this conversation was over. Cameron doesn't need more things, Mr. Blackwell. He needs his father. He needs someone who will sit with him when he's sad, celebrate with him when he's happy, and show up for the ordinary everyday moments that make a childhood. Wait, Vincent said as Rose moved toward the door. Don't go. I need your help. Rose turned back, surprised. My help with what? Teaching me. Not piano. Teaching me how to be what Cameron needs. Vincent ran his hand through his hair, a gesture of frustration and helplessness. I don't know how to do this. My own father was absent just like I am now. I don't know how to talk to him about feelings. I don't know what questions to ask or how to connect. But you do. You've built something with him in 3 months that I couldn't build in 12 years. Mr. Blackwell. Vincent. Please just call me Vincent. Rose studied him for a long moment, and Vincent felt like she was seeing right through him, weighing whether he was sincere or just feeling guilty. Finally, she nodded. Okay, Vincent. But I need to know you're serious about this. Cameron's been disappointed by adults enough in his life. If you're going to step up, you need to really step up. Not for a week until you get busy again. Not until the next big business deal comes along. You need to commit to being present in his life. I am. I'll clear my schedule, delegate more, whatever it takes. It's not about your schedule. It's about your priorities. Cameron needs to feel like he matters more than your work. Not just hear it, feel it. That means showing up consistently, being there even when it's inconvenient. Putting him first. Vincent nodded, feeling the weight of what he was committing to. I understand. Will you help me? I'll help. But you have to do the work. I can't build your relationship with your son for you. I can only show you the door. You have to walk through it. Over the next 2 weeks, Vincent's life changed in ways he never could have imagined. He called his board of directors and announced he was taking a leave of absence. Not a few days. An indefinite leave to handle personal matters. The reaction ranged from shocked to supportive to angry, but Vincent didn't care. For the first time in his career, something mattered more than the company. Rose became an unlikely coach, teaching Vincent the basics of being present. Start with breakfast, she said. Every morning, sit with him. Ask him about school. Not just how was school, but specific questions. What's he studying in history? Who does he sit with at lunch? What's something funny that happened today? The first morning Vincent tried, it was awkward. Cameron came down to breakfast and froze when he saw his father sitting at the table. Dad, what are you doing here? Aren't you supposed to be in Singapore? I came home early. Thought I'd have breakfast with you. Cameron sat down slowly like he was approaching a trap. Rose brought them both plates of food and gave Vincent an encouraging nod before disappearing into another room. So, Vincent said, trying to remember Rose's advice. What are you studying in school right now? The usual stuff. History, math, English. What period of history? The Civil War. That's interesting. Are you enjoying it? Cameron shrugged. It's okay, I guess. The conversation was stilted and uncomfortable. Vincent had no idea what he was doing, but he kept trying, kept asking questions even when Cameron's answers were short and uncertain. After 20 minutes, Cameron excused himself to get ready for school. That was terrible, Vincent said when Rose came back into the kitchen. He barely talked to me. Give it time. He's not used to this version of you. He's trying to figure out if it's real or if you're going to disappear again. You have to prove you're staying. Vincent showed up for breakfast again the next morning, and the next. By the end of the week, Cameron started relaxing a little. His answers got longer. He even asked Vincent a question about his work, something he'd never done before. Rose taught Vincent other things too. Don't try to fix everything, she said. When he tells you about a problem, your instinct is going to be to solve it. Resist that. Just listen. Sometimes kids need to vent, not get solutions. It went against every instinct Vincent had. He was a problem solver, a fixer. But when Cameron complained about a friend who was being difficult, Vincent bit his tongue and just said, "That sounds frustrating." It is, Cameron said, and then talked for 10 minutes about the situation. He didn't need Vincent to call the other kids' parents or arrange a meeting with the teacher. He just needed to be heard. Vincent started attending Cameron's school events. A history presentation, a basketball game, a science fair. At first, Cameron seemed shocked to see him there. But as it kept happening, something shifted. Cameron started looking for Vincent in the crowd. His face would light up when he spotted him. After the basketball game, where Cameron scored 6 points, he ran over to Vincent, breathless and excited. "Did you see that shot I made in the third quarter?" "I saw it. It was incredible." Cameron beamed in a way that made Vincent's chest ache. How many moments like this had he missed? How many times had his son looked for him in the crowd and not found him there? The piano was still a bridge Vincent hadn't crossed. Rose continued Cameron's lessons, and Vincent would listen from outside the room, moved by his son's playing but unsure how to be part of it. "You should ask him to teach you," Rose suggested one evening. "I don't have any musical talent." It's not about talent. It's about showing him you care about the things he cares about being willing to be a beginner at something, to struggle and make mistakes in front of him. That teaches humility. So Vincent gathered his courage and knocked on the music room door one afternoon during Cameron's practice time. "Come in," Cameron called. Vincent entered to find Cameron at the piano, Rose standing beside him. Both looked surprised to see him. I was wondering if you might teach me," Vincent said to Cameron. "Piano, I mean. If you're willing." Cameron's eyes went wide. "You want me to teach you? I've heard you play. You're really good. And I'd like to understand this thing that's important to you." Cameron looked at Rose, who smiled and nodded. "What do you think, Cameron? Want to teach your dad?" "Yeah," Cameron said, a slow smile spreading across his face. "Yeah, I do." The first piano lesson was humbling in ways Vincent hadn't anticipated. He was used to being good at things, to picking up new skills quickly, to dominating whatever room he entered. But sitting at that piano bench with his 12-year-old son, patiently explaining basic scales, Vincent felt completely out of his depth. "No, Dad. Your thumb goes here on middle C," Cameron said, repositioning Vincent's hand on the keys. "And keep your wrist relaxed. You're too tense." Vincent tried to relax, but his hands felt clumsy and awkward. When he pressed the keys, the notes came out choppy and disconnected. Nothing like the fluid beauty of Cameron's playing. "This is harder than it looks," Vincent admitted. "Everything's hard at first," Cameron said, and Vincent recognized Rose's wisdom in his son's words. "You just have to practice. Here, try the scale again, but slower this time. Don't worry about speed. Worry about getting each note clean." They worked for 30 minutes, and by the end, Vincent could play a single scale without making too many mistakes. It wasn't impressive, but Cameron looked proud anyway. "You did good for your first time," he said. "Most people give up way faster than that." "I'm not giving up," Vincent said. "Same time tomorrow? Really? You want to do this every day? If you're willing to teach me." Something softened in Cameron's face. "Yeah, I'm willing." From across the room, Rose watched them with a small smile. Later, after Cameron went upstairs to do homework, she found Vincent in the kitchen looking exhausted but satisfied. "How do you feel?" she asked. "Like my fingers are going to fall off, and like I just had the best 30 minutes I've had in years." Vincent poured himself water from the refrigerator. "I never realized how brave it is to be a beginner, to be bad at something in front of someone else." That's exactly what Cameron needs to see, that his father isn't perfect, that you're willing to struggle and fail and keep trying anyway. That builds trust more than any amount of money or success. Vincent sat at the kitchen table, rotating his stiff hands. "Can I ask you something?" "About Cameron's mother." Rose sat down across from him. "Go ahead. He told you about her being pregnant. About how it made him feel. Why didn't he tell me?" "Because he doesn't trust that you'll handle his feelings well. He doesn't trust that you'll stay present through the hard stuff." "But I would. I want to." "Then you have to prove it. Not with words, but with action. You have to be there consistently, especially when it's difficult. You have to show him that you're not going to run away from his pain like his mother did." "How do I do that?" Rose thought about it. "Next time he's upset about something, don't try to fix it. Don't minimize it. Don't tell him it's not a big deal or that he'll get over it. Just sit with him in the feeling. Be present with his pain. That's what he needs most." The opportunity came sooner than Vincent expected. 2 days later, Cameron came home from school in a dark mood. He dropped his backpack, grabbed a snack from the kitchen without speaking, and headed upstairs. Vincent heard his bedroom door close with more force than necessary. His first instinct was to give Cameron space. His second instinct was to go up there and demand to know what was wrong. But he remembered Rose's advice. Be present, don't fix, just be. Vincent climbed the stairs and knocked on Cameron's door. "What?" Cameron's voice was sharp. "It's me. Can I come in?" A pause. "I guess." Vincent opened the door to find Cameron face down on his bed, still in his school uniform. The room was a typical 12-year-old's space. Posters on the walls, clothes on the floor, homework scattered on the desk. Vincent realized he couldn't remember the last time he'd actually been in here. "Want to talk about it?" Vincent asked, sitting on the edge of the bed. "Not really." "Okay, can I just sit here then?" Cameron turned his head to look at his father, suspicious. "Why would you do that?" "Because you seem upset and I don't want you to be alone with it." Cameron studied him for a long moment, then turned back to his pillow. "You're going to think it's stupid." "I promise I won't. I got cut from the basketball team. Coach said I'm good but not good enough to make the starting lineup and there's only room for 10 guys. I was number 11. Vincent's immediate reaction was to jump into problem-solving mode. He could call the coach or hire a private basketball trainer or find a different team. But he heard Rose's voice in his head. Just be present. Don't fix. That really sucks, Vincent said instead. Cameron rolled over to face him, surprise on his face. That's it? You're not going to tell me it's fine or that there are other things I can do? Do you want me to tell you that? No, I want to be upset about it. I've been practicing every day. I thought I was good enough. And now I'm not, and it hurts. Then it's okay to hurt. You worked hard, you wanted it, and you didn't get it. That's disappointing and frustrating, and it's okay to feel that way. Cameron's eyes filled with tears. I really wanted to make that team. All my friends made it. I know. I'm sorry, buddy. And then Cameron did something he hadn't done in years. He sat up and hugged his father. Really hugged him, not the awkward side hug they usually did. Vincent wrapped his arms around his son and held him, while he cried about basketball and disappointment and feeling left out. I'm proud of you for trying, Vincent said when Cameron pulled back. That took guts, going out there and putting yourself on the line. It doesn't feel like guts. It feels like failure. Failure is just part of trying. You can't succeed at things if you're not willing to risk failing at them. Vincent looked at his son directly. I've failed at more things than you can imagine. But the biggest failure of my life was almost losing you because I was too busy to show up. You didn't lose me, Cameron said quietly. I almost did. If Rose hadn't been here, if I hadn't come home early and seen what I was missing, I don't know if you ever would have let me back in. Cameron wiped his face on his sleeve. I'm glad you came home early. Me too. They sat together for a while longer, not talking, just being in the same space. Eventually, Cameron said, Want to go shoot some hoops? Even if I'm not good enough for the team, I still like playing. I'd love that. They spent the next hour in the driveway, shooting baskets in the fading evening light. Vincent was rusty and missed more shots than he made. But Cameron laughed and gave him pointers. And it was one of the best hours Vincent had spent in years. Later that night, after Cameron was in bed, Vincent found Rose in the music room. She was playing something soft and melancholy, her eyes closed, lost in the music. Vincent waited until she finished. That was beautiful. Sad, but beautiful. Rose opened her eyes. It's a piece I wrote after Natasha's father left. I was so scared and angry and heartbroken. This is how I processed it. You compose too, sometimes. When the feelings are too big for other people's music. She stood up from the piano bench. How did it go with Cameron? He got cut from the basketball team. I sat with him while he was upset about it. Didn't try to fix it. Just listened. And he hugged me. Actually hugged me. It felt like something shifted between us. Rose smiled. That's because something did shift. He's learning that he can bring you his pain and you won't run from it. That's the foundation of trust. I don't want to mess this up. I don't want to slip back into old patterns. Then don't. It's that simple and that hard. You make the choice every day to show up, to be present, to prioritize him. Some days will be easier than others. Some days you'll fail. But as long as you keep choosing him, you'll be okay. The weeks continued, and Vincent's life became unrecognizable from what it had been. He still worked, but from home and only during school hours. Mornings were for breakfast with Cameron. Afternoons were for homework help or piano practice or just hanging out. Evenings were for dinner together and talking about their days. Vincent learned Cameron's world in detail. He knew that his son's best friend was named Leo, and that they'd been friends since kindergarten. He knew Cameron had a crush on a girl named Isabel but was too nervous to talk to her. He knew his son was good at math but struggled with writing essays. He knew Cameron's favorite food was his grandmother's pot roast, which Rose had learned to make after Cameron mentioned missing it. He learned that Cameron was funny and creative and more emotionally intelligent than Vincent had ever given him credit for. He learned that his son thought deeply about things like fairness and justice and what it meant to be a good person. Do you think rich people have a responsibility to help poor people? Cameron asked one night over dinner. What brought this up? Vincent asked. We're studying the Industrial Revolution in history. All these wealthy factory owners were making tons of money while their workers lived in terrible conditions. It made me think about us. We have so much and there are people with nothing. Is that fair? What do you think? Cameron considered it. I think if you have more than you need, you should help people who don't have enough. Not because you have to, but because it's the right thing to do. Like Rose. She doesn't have much money, but she's always helping people anyway. Vincent looked at Rose, who was bringing more food to the table, and saw her pause at Cameron's words. What do you mean? Vincent asked his son. She volunteers at her church every Sunday helping serve food to homeless people, and she told me she sends money to her aunt back in Georgia who's sick and can't work. And last week she paid for this kid at my school to get lunch because he forgot his money. Cameron looked at Rose with obvious admiration. She's always doing stuff like that. Just helping people because they need help. Vincent had no idea about any of this. He'd never thought to ask what Rose did on her days off or how she spent her own money. He'd been so focused on his own revelation about being present with Cameron that he hadn't considered Rose as a full person with her own life and generosity. That's very kind of you, Vincent said to Rose. Rose looked uncomfortable with the attention. It's nothing special. Just doing what I can with what I have. It is special, Cameron insisted. Not everyone does that. Most people just think about themselves. That night, after Cameron went to bed, Vincent pulled up his laptop and did something he'd been thinking about for days. He drafted an email to his company's charitable foundation, outlining a new initiative: scholarships for talented young musicians who couldn't afford formal training, grants for music programs in underfunded schools, support for single parents trying to pursue education. He showed it to Rose before sending it. What do you think? Rose read it slowly, and when she looked up, her eyes were shining with tears. Vincent, this is wonderful. But why? Because you're right. If you have more than you need, you should help people who don't have enough. Because somewhere out there is another young woman like you were, talented and passionate but without resources. Because Cameron's watching what I do, and I want him to see that wealth comes with responsibility. This is going to change lives, Rose said quietly. I hope so, but it wouldn't have happened if you hadn't been here. You didn't just change Cameron's life. You changed mine too, Rose smiled. I think you did the changing yourself. I just showed you the door, remember? You walked through it. Still, I want you to be part of this. The foundation will need someone who understands music education, who knows what struggling artists need, someone who can identify talent and potential. Would you consider being a consultant for the program? Vincent, I'm a housekeeper. You're a conservatory-trained musician who raised a daughter alone while working multiple jobs. You're someone who understands both the world of music and the reality of poverty. That's exactly who we need. And before you say no, it would be paid. Significantly paid. Enough that you wouldn't need to clean houses anymore unless you wanted to. Rose was quiet for a long time. Can I think about it? Of course. Take all the time you need. 3 months after Vincent came home early and discovered Rose teaching Cameron piano, life in the Blackwell mansion had transformed completely. The house that once felt like a museum, beautiful but empty, now felt like a home. There was laughter in the hallways, music drifting from room to room, the comfortable chaos of people actually living instead of just existing.